Unathi, just connected to what you were talking about, you were mentioning companies like VW. What are some of the skills that you believe are needed by young people to prepare them for the world of work?
Thank you. As I said that first, before we can say that there's opportunity for young people, what we do the need analysis, we do the assessment, we go to the company. If we go to VW, that we ask them, what is it, if an opportunity comes for young people, what is it that you need them for? So that we are able to say that, okay, Harambe, in partnership with social development, this is the company will need young people, 100 young people with this kind of a skill. Then what we do, we incubate them, we put them in an incubator program toward that skill that is needed. First, it's important to find out what skill the company needs, so that when you train these young people, you train them to something that is needed, not something that is overpopulated, that they are not going to get employment. But because the aim that we have is for these young people to get employment. You understand? And it is very, very, very important for us that we go according to that. We train them according to the skill that is needed by a certain company, so that when are done the incubator program, they are able to go and be able to go and work to the company. You understand that the skills that is needed depend to the company, depend to different company. That's why first, before we train them, we go to a company to do a need analysis and a assessment to the certain company. If it's good here, we go and do that to this company around, even the ones that in Gqeberha.
Thank you, Unathi. I mean, I think it's amazing, and that you do take the time. There isn't assumptions being made about what is, what young people should be doing and what will enable them to get work once they have been put into incubator programs, which is sometimes the challenge in different communities around South Africa. I think the multi-stakeholder approach that you use is an amazing one. Vuyo, back to you again. Hopefully we have you back now. My question just before we lost you was around some of the challenges and how you create enabling spaces given the challenges faced from a cultural, religious, and traditional perspective. And how you create space for LGBT young people.
How we create spaces for young people is, first, we have a non-judgmental environment. We create a non-judgmental environment because most of the young people come from families that are not welcoming to the LGBTI community, who don't even want to hear about a child being gay. That's why it's important as a social worker, you create a non-judgmental environment. Secondly, it's important to sensitize your colleagues, because you'll find some social workers will let you know, say, I don't know what must I say, how should I address in terms of pronouns of the gay community, of the LGBTI community. Then it's important as a social worker, you are sensitized, able to ask the right question without being prejudiced to the next person. So in most of our sessions, we always say that confidentiality is guaranteed. We should make this, no one will be judged because of who they are. You need to choose who you want to be, how you want to represent yourself in order for you to feel comfortable to share in most of our support sessions when we have them. So that's how mostly we create these safe spaces, because we already know that most of the young people are coming from homes that already they've been judged so many times, already they feel helpless because already they've lost hope in terms of who is willing to listen to them and where can they share and become free to who they want to be. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm going to stay with you for a minute, and this question also touches home because as I was introduced, I also run a shelter in Ekurhuleni. How so when you bring people together in one space because of multiple psychosocial challenges that have caused their displacement or homelessness, requiring them to live in a shelter, what are some of the systemic and relational tools that you have in place to manage relationships in the shelter and ensure that the shelter has an overall smooth running culture?
In our shelter, first, the shelter was not conducive for LGBTI community. But as a social worker working in that space, I had to make it conducive to the LGBTI community because we had 2 trans women that were part of the shelter and 1 gay man that was part of the shelter. So we had to then divide the shelter into different spaces where we had a space for women, we had a space for young men and older person. Now, the trans women were part of the space where women were so-called heterosexuals were in, because we wanted people to know that we don't judge people due to their sexual orientation. And what I made was that I had called upon Gqeberha social inclusion to come into the shelter and do a sensitization for the whole members of the shelter, including the volunteers, because it's important that the people that you work with in the shelter, especially the volunteers, are sensitized, because sensitization comes a long way. It helps with stereotyping. It helps with for people to be able to know what to say and how to say it, because language is one of the biggest tools that you can use to kill a person emotionally. So once sensitization was done and people were given an opportunity to sleep where they wanted and where they felt comfortable sleeping, then that has helped us a lot. So in the shelter, because the shelter is in the location, not only LGBTI persons were there, even people of color. I mean, white people were part of the shelter in the deepest location in the Nelson Mandela. So it had helped to see that there's diversity in sexual orientation, in color, and then it had made the shelter to be a conducive environment for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next question goes to both our icons, and you can choose. I think, Unathi, maybe you can go first. What are the challenges that you experience in your work as social workers? And what keeps you motivated to continue doing this work? And what kind of support do social workers in the field need from their communities? I think, you guys do such phenomenal work. And what keeps you here after so many years?
Thank you. The first, let me go to the challenges. The challenges, one is the resources, lack of resource within the department. If I can make an example, we are about plus minus 50 social workers in the office, but we have only 2 cars. We are about 5 sections, 6 with the management, but 6 sections. Then when you want to go and do the visit, there's no car. But because you are passionate about the work that you are doing, number 2, the client that you are servicing, sometimes you cannot make stories because, one, you think of your professionalism if you keep on saying that I don't have a car to come and visit you. We ended up sometimes using our own cars because what is in our mind that, what about the client that needs services? Because remember that before the client comes to your office, it's a struggle because Maybe the client was raped, maybe the client is under domestic violence. It's not easy to go and divulge information to somebody that you don't even know. It takes guts for that. That's why when the client comes to your office, you need to respect the client. You need to go beyond the call of duty to assist the client, regardless of the resources that we do not have within the department. But because you are safeguarding the profession, you make sure that the client is served and the client, you put the client first. That's what the battlefield said, that put the client first. Then the other nitty-gritty things within the office will follow. But if first you need to serve the client. What makes me to be here even now is the love of the profession that I chose. I love social work. There's no other profession that I would like to go to or like to choose. Social work, I'm social work is me. I love social work and I love to help a client. I love to see the client that I assisted standing on his or their own. You know, sometimes you work with so many people that you don't even sometimes recognize their names. But when you sometimes go to maybe going to town, you meet people, and when they greet you, sometimes you forgot. They remind you that I'm your client. Remember that when I came to you, I had a problem with my child. My child is in university or my child graduated. That's when you see that I have played my role. I have made an impact in the life of the client. Then you feel so proud that at least amongst in the community, there's this one person that at least I have assisted. That's what makes me to still be a social worker even today. And I love and I have passion for the work that I'm doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Unathi. Vuyo, same question.
I think Unathi has covered the majority of the challenges, but our biggest challenge to where I'm at right now is crime, the hijackings that happen in our area. Recently, we had social workers that were hijacked and they were gun pointed at, and their stuff were taken from them. As people who love our community and we want to serve our community fearlessly, we feel scared to go and do home visits due to us being afraid of being hijacked, even robbed of our belongings. Because we know we won't have EAP, you'll be told that you have a medical aid, go find a psychologist for yourself. Those is one of the biggest challenges. My second challenge that I have noted is that the lack of shelters in the Nelson Mandela has shown us during COVID that there's a bigger need that needs to be done by government by providing shelters that are gender inclusive of all genders. The shelter that I was in now has closed because we were able to really find those who were residents. But now, when you look now, it's winter time. How many people are displaced who are homeless, who don't have a space to go? Due to that, the shelter was a temporary place. Now, government has not yet identified a permanent space for the displaced. So my wish is that government can be able to have a permanent place for those who are displaced, because not every homeless person is someone using drugs or running away from home, not because don't want to be under their parents' guidance or something. The last challenge that we have is that we are understaffed. We have lots of social work graduates who are unemployed. Each and every day, social ills are continue to be the biggest problem in South Africa. As the recent cases of domestic violence, as the recent cases of Namhla case of murder, how many women have been killed by their partners, and we cannot reach as many that we want to reach as social workers because the number of those are employed, it's very few social workers. I wish government can have social workers in the schools. Government can have social workers. Each and every government department have a social worker that is placed there so that no one becomes left in the cracks due to non-availability of social services. So what has kept me to continue doing the work that I love so much? It's because I was once also helped by a social worker. I've seen the love the social worker has for people, and the pleasure of knowing that I've done good. Because when I was at the shelter, I was able to see the impact of my work, because you're able to monitor the change from the first time the person got into the shelter until the time the person goes back home. And when you get the reports from the families to say to you that, thank you, social worker, we can see the difference. The person is no longer stealing from us, selling our personal belongings. The person has found a job now. These are the things that keep us going and continuing to going beyond the call of duty. Thank you.
Thank you, Vuyo. Unathi, you've spoken so much about what you and your department are doing and how you're integrating your work with business. What do you believe both government and business can do even more to alleviate unemployment, because we have one of the highest unemployment rates in the world? And how do we create a skilled workforce who's able to contribute to the transformation of our communities?
Thank you. I think, as I have said before, I think the important thing that the government need to do together with the business is to call the young people and ask them. You know, sometimes when you need solution, even as a social workers, that's what we do. We don't give solution to the clients, but we sit down with the client, then we ask, what will be the solution? Then we evaluate each and every solution that the client comes with. What are the pros and cons of each and every, until we come to a solution that will fit the challenge the client comes with. At the end of the day, so that they know that the solution never came from the social worker, but the social worker assisted me to come to the solution. I think what needs to be done is to call young people. Now that we have the high rate of unemployment, what do you think can assist you to have an income, rather than doing the handouts that we are doing as a government, because the government is doing with handouts? That's not a solution. We need a permanent solution where we see the rate of unemployment decreasing, not escalating the way it is escalating now. I think the solution is within the young people that are unemployed, but they need to be channeled to a right place. They need to sit down with the government and tell them that we are innovative, we are young, we know what we can do. Give us a chance to do those things, that we are innovative, because they can use their hands, but what they need the boost from the government. This is what we can do. What is it the government that can do? This is what we can provide, so that you can take what you do further, so that it can sustain you and make your life better. Thank you.
Thank you. Vuyo, working with LGBT community, what are some of the ways in which you have tapped into existing support systems to ensure that service users from the LGBT community are able to be serviced in spite of how they present and the biases that service providers assisting them have? And what shifts have you seen? I mean, you just spoke about briefly about how you started sensitization workshops when you started the shelter, but what are the shifts that you're seeing? Especially as you say, we don't have enough shelters.
Thank you, Nandi. In the Nelson Mandela Metro, first we were able to reach out to I forgot the name of the program, but it's SPU in the Nelson Mandela municipality. We were able to reach out to Ms. Tabisa, who had played a big role for us as people who are human rights activists. We were able to her that there is a high need of an inclusive pride in the Nelson Mandela, because we noted past years that most prides that have done, there's been 2 prides in the Nelson Mandela. You'll find there's a pride in town and there's a pride in the location. Then we had said that cannot be happening in our Nelson Mandela. When there was an establishment of the LGBTI sector, the LGBTI sector, then I was part of as the chairperson of the LGBTI sector. We had sat down with different organizations and tabled issues with the Nelson Mandela municipality so that they can start fixing that, because the AIDS Council is the one who's funding these prides. And it cannot be that we allow a situation that the whole metro has 2 prides and where we can supposed to have one as a whole community, because we are one community, not 2 communities. Secondly, what we've done, the most important one, is to start in the schools, because most bullyism comes from the schools. And what we've noticed, most suicidal cases come from the schools and most violence comes from the schools. So you need to start where the problem is at, by starting with the young people in the schools in order to sensitize them so that they can learn at a very early young age that inclusion is how society should be about. That a genderless society is possible in our communities, because the moment our kids are taught in schools to discriminate others by the language that is used by teachers, because some teachers will find that they use hate speech when they speak to learners, and learners learn from what they see. Now, we did sensitization for teachers, learners, including their parents, because that is a whole community of the school and the community that can take this back to where the people live. So we start at a micro level to a macro level. We are able to do campaigns where we go to different assemblies where children bring their presentations on how they understand in terms of what bullyism and how to become an ally for an LGBTI learner who's bullied at the school. LGBTI learners also would do their own presentation to state Kuti who they are and what acceptance is, because most people who want people to be accepted and to be accepted for who they are. So this is the work that we have done in our Nelson Mandela, that SPU has recognized that there is a need for LGBTI desk in the Nelson Mandela Metro. The Department of Social Development has been sensitized, and social workers have been attending more and more workshops on LGBTI and how to do interventions for the LGBTI community. For us, it is a big thing because we can see different changes. Churches like the Anglican Church in New Brighton have been opening their doors for us to come in and do sensitization for their leaders, including the Methodist Church. So it is very impressive how the movement has come now, that people are able to speak about it. It's no longer something taboo in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Vuyo. Vuyo and Unathi. Vuyo, you already briefly mentioned. Do you have social workers who have mentored you and whose impact on your life encouraged you to be a better social worker today than you were yesterday? We'll start with you, Vuyo, because you said it was a social worker that encouraged you to be a social worker.
I want to mention him by name because most people that come from Kariega, also known as Youth Neck, they know her. Mamunomini Segogo was the first person. Yes, she's from Youth Neck, a place called She. She had then made me to be part of the National Children Rights Committee a committee that was able to establish the rights of children, the Bill of Rights of Children. I was part of that. The first time I went into a plane, it was due to her, because I was part of the children that were picked to go to Joburg to amend the Children's Rights Bill. So when I read the Children's Act that we use today as our Bible as social workers, I become so proud, because I know I was part of the children that were doing the Bill of Rights. So Mamunominise Gogo played a huge role, because she would have sessions for us on weekends where we come and discuss different rights and their responsibilities. She would unpack and challenge our minds so that we are able to analyze and critically look at issues. Number two was Professor Masholo Guguse, who comes from Nelson Mandela University. She has now passed on, but she would say to us, as a community worker, you have a responsibility to look beyond what is in front of you. There's no gray area, but as a community member, you need to be able to advocate for your people that you are working for in that community. She would challenge and say, be an agent of change. That is what you need to be. Don't leave a community without an impact being made. Make by all means to see that impact is there and people have taken ownership of their community. The last person, not the least, was Ms. Sochi, also from NMMU, who's now the head of the Department of Social Professions. One thing that I took out from her was never let the person stand in front of the profession. Always find balance between the two. Sometimes we, as professionals, we forget that we are human beings. And sometimes as human beings, we forget that we are professionals. As a worker, you need to find a balance between the two so that you are able to advocate for yourself and for your community. Never be bigger than your community because you are a professional, but never then harden your heart because you're saying that you are a human being. So those are the people that impacted my life to where I am today. Social workers that still continue to teach me in terms of what it means.
We've lost Vuyo, and that's such an amazing story. As she talked about Mam Nominise, I was reminded that I too was mentored by Umam Nominisi through work that I did on child labor with her. So it's such a small world. Unathi,